All right, click the links to subscribe to the channel here while you can, or over on subscribe. So thanks everyone's signing up on those alt platforms. So PsychOps 101, Tim Pool, Kanye, Milo, Nick. Assume it was a PsychOp right from the start, but a good one for our side if you're on the side of free speech and bringing up a lot of important issues and sacred cows kind of thing. So I mean, the thing is, like, the underlying argument. It doesn't matter what the underlying argument, because the main issue is free speech, being free from political discrimination, not being ruled by Google and Apple and big tech, and not living in a world where banks, financial institutions, and big tech can effectively destroy your life. It's like, that's not, if the founding fathers so valued free speech, they value individual liberty over $1 billion corporation. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm on board with that. So what happened? Tim Pool brings on the 3 hottest, most radioactive incandescent guests he could possibly find. Now strap on your tinfoil hats and change your understanding of what the motive here actually was. And I can say all this because I know nobody on YouTube is listening to this, and I know nobody on the left is listening to this also. The goal is not to get these guys on for the full 2 hours to slaughter sacred cows. At 20 minutes, he had 90,000 viewers. After an hour, he would have had hundreds of thousands. I mean, it would have been melting. It would have been the biggest live stream at YouTube for at least this kind of political content. Do you think YouTube is going to allow these guys to say what they were saying and continue to say the stuff they were saying for a full 2 hours? Susan would have made a phone call. She probably has a shutdown button right on her desk, and she would have killed the stream after an hour. Like, oh, there's 500,000 people watching these 3 radioactive guests say the things they're saying. She's like, well, Tim, it's been nice knowing you, but buddy, you're gone. That would have been Tim Pool's last show on YouTube. Susan would have kicked him off. PayPal, Patreon, the banks, all the financial institutions, everyone in the mainstream suddenly would have made Tim Pool persona non grata. It's a show that brings in millions of dollars per month, and he's got dozens of employees. He did what he could in his defense, and I know everyone calls him soylent and they're mad at all this kind of stuff, but I think you got to re-examine your perspective. The goal was never to get on there for the full 2 hours. The days of 2016 YouTube are absolutely gone. Tim Pool, Mark Dice, Paul Jeff Watson, Crowder, those are the furthest right-wing guys on YouTube right now, and they're on the thinnest of ice. After Trump got elected in 2016, YouTube got rid of tens of thousands of the far extremist right-wing channels that helped Trump get elected because they didn't want him to get elected again. Yes, I'm saying that they literally control elections because they literally do. So they kicked off all those channels. And imagine a spectrum, a yardstick, and you cut off the far right. It's like, well, the new far right is the new far right. It's just it's a relative term. So like Tim Pool now, because the window has shifted so far so fast, no, he's not on the right. He's not on the right to us. If you're on the moderate, like legitimate right, he's still a left-wing nut job. The left wing has moved so far. For the YouTube system, he's in the same group as everyone on the far right, because there is no far right on YouTube anymore. They're all on Shing and Odyssey and a bunch of other channels. Anyway, so Twitter X may change the game. That'll come in the future. I got my fingers crossed for that. And people are looking at people like there's a naysayers on Twitter and they're naysaying on the tech of Twitter. Talking about the Tesla phone and the OS operating system and Twitter X, the video hosting live streaming platform, essentially a YouTube replacement. And it's like, if anything could be a YouTube replacement, that Twitter, anything associated with Twitter and Musk could be it, because he's got a built-in audience. And he also has a cult of personality behind him, and I mean that in a positive way, because he's doing things that people are on board with. And people are going, oh, this phone would take years to get off the ground. Dude, they just order the chipsets and the camera and the assembly you want and the cosmetic details from any country that makes phones. The hardware's already out there. You just order that, and you take like something similar to I don't know what the Android is, it a Linux operating system, and you take something similar to that. It's like that might take a little bit of time, but we're not talking years. I think like a very surprisingly, shockingly short time period to get a phone off the ground with an Android type of operating system as compared to Google. Oh, well, you couldn't possibly have an electric car? No, he didn't build the electric car, but I mean to make Tesla like a household name. Oh, you couldn't possibly make an iPhone, but somebody literally did make an iPhone. This is right up the guy's alley. Anyway, so Twitter X video hosting platform, and when that comes around, it's not like Odyssey, because Odyssey had to start from the ground up. It's like Twitter already has a built-in audience. If he gets off the ground and starts small and slowly starts scaling it up, yeah, that's probably going to replace YouTube. Yeah, that's not a hyperbolic statement. Like, what do you think happened to MySpace? Like, what do you think's happening to Facebook now? Yes, it's one of the biggest companies in the world, but they literally just lost $15 billion doing some bizarro matrix experiment. Anyway, so imagine Tim and Wes get together and they figure out, how do we do this without getting Tim kicked off, what's making millions of dollars per month. What you saw was the accommodation. Wes gets on there and he makes a few points for 20 minutes. That was the goal the whole time, I think. Tim played the role. He got the virtue signal so he wouldn't get kicked off. He played the good guy to defend YouTube and Susan, and it was the plausible deniability. Luke played the naive baby face who was sneaking red pills in. Yes, go back and watch it again. It doesn't matter how condescending or arrogant somebody is. It matters the words and phrases they're dropping that make people think. Luke was dropping those words, those associations that a couple days later you hear them again. You're like, oh, wait a minute, I've heard that before. Let me make these connections. If you view it from that perspective, Luke and Tim were actually doing really, really good stuff. People are only getting upset if they thought that he was going to have him for 2 hours. That was never the goal. He named the trainer. I don't say anything in the comments, and the mind control groups he was associated with, and some other associations. So Luke's is like something ski. His hippie naive act, I think, is for plausible deniability, so he can play the baby face. Assume he is our guy, and it changes your perspective entirely. Like, I think everyone involved might have been playing this game of chess. Think of it this way: if Tim and Luke wanted to, one, platform these guys, and two, stay on YouTube as long as possible, and to be honest, like, is Tim going to be on 2 years from now? He's had on some hot guests. I don't know. And like, for him, that means multi-million dollars out the window. So like, you got to give people credit. You got to give people credit, but you got to look at the whole situation. Like, he's having on the hottest of hottest guests, and he didn't need to do that. And I've listened to his show before. Luke and Tim and the other guests are leading people to the water. It's like they're not right there, but they like, you got to make the final connections yourself. You can't get mad at somebody because he only goes 90%. It's like, yeah, you can go. The people in the comment section will take you the other 10%. Anyway. So I think what you saw was a perfect compromise. You don't have free speech on YouTube. The censorship is insane. I say this as someone who makes videos, who has had a strike. Strikes are 3 months long. And so when one wears off, you get a warning of 3 months and then a strike for 3 months. So anytime within that 3 month period, you'll get these strikes. So I say this as someone who's had either a strike or a warning for almost the entirety of the channel, which is, I don't know what, like 2 or 3 years of making videos. It's literally under a warning right now, the channel, the whole time. So I know how insane the censorship is, even with a very small channel. The days of 2018, Carl Benjamin, Worski, Spencer live streams, those are long gone. I caught that live stream live when it came out 4 years ago. It was a very exciting stream. That's never going to happen again. That was a stream of 6 calm, reasonable guys talking. And if anything, Carl Benjamin was he was getting the most bothered, hot under the collar, because at the time he was a virtue signaler, and finally he's slowly moving to the right. But those were 6 calm, reasonable guys who were talking politics. It made everyone, the optics of that is what YouTube does not ever want to have repeated. 6 people talking politics. They want to label those guys as far extreme, crazy people marching around, and like they have a living in trailers and smoking meth, and like they have an optics check that they're trying to do for these people. And when you actually get them talking to each other, it's like, oh, it was a very reasonable conversation. That is what these platforms do not want to have happen. People want to hear those topics discussed. There was thousands of people in that live stream. I think it made #1 in streaming, in trending on YouTube. And it doesn't matter if fans of Carl or Spencer said that their guys won. Fans of free speech, no, it doesn't matter who wins or loses. It's the same with Tim Pool and Kanye. The goal was never to let him talk for 90 minutes. Tim would have been kicked off YouTube the next day. The goal was this chess match that you saw before you. These 3 kings get on there, and they and they throw some jabs for a little bit with Luke's help, and they're dropping these red pills. Tim gets the virtue signal as a shill. Then Wes leaves after 20 minutes. The whole thing was brilliant. It was either planned or incredibly serendipitous. Tim and Luke, if you view them as the white hats, it changes your perspective entirely. Winning is the 20-minute mainstreaming of the ideas of free speech and tech censorship. That's the win, and that was a serious win. There are right-wing guys who are upset at Tim and Luke. I think they need to go back and watch the first 20 minutes over again. You got to understand the battlefield and the minefield that is present-day YouTube. It's insane. The goal was never a 2-hour talk. Susan would have pulled the plug and probably Epstein everyone involved. I probably shouldn't have said that. Shit. Anyway, pretend you didn't hear that. So they get in there, they make some points, and they use this dramatic exit to deflect attention away from blaming Tim Pool for platforming these guys. Keep in mind, Tim Pool did platform them. 20 minutes of making points is better than nothing at all. I can say that my interpretation here, because I know like of the 200 people who see this video, I don't think anyone at YouTube is going to see this video, and that's the only thing. That's the advantage of having a small channel where like everyone is kind of on your side, is that you're not like there are like Twitter has echo chambers of like clouds of associations of right and left wing people, and there's not a lot of overlap. At least there wasn't a lot of overlap before. Because if you were on the right and you blew up and left-wing people got view of your channel, they would just mass report you and get you removed. Where right-wing people were not as often mass reporting left-wing people, but even if they were, left-wing people weren't getting removed. Now Elon, I know I sound like a fanboy over the past week, is bought Twitter, and suddenly left-wing, he's getting rid of the stuff that deals with kids, and like there's a lot of overlap between the Bolsheviks and the stuff with kids. Not because they're personally into kids so much. I won't defame them that far, but I will say because they use it as a weapon in the culture war. So I mean, it's the same thing. It's like if you support something, it's like it's inherent. It's liability. It's like the felony murder rule, so to speak. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I hope this is okay for the filters. I'll see you guys next episode.